I've got another one of Frank's bikes in my garage. This one is a 1991 Honda XR250L. I'm going to be going through it to see what we need to do to get it into running order. Frank bought this one from a guy who kept it at a place right by the ocean, and there's ample evidence of exposure to the salty environment. As you can see, there's a fair bit of oxidation on the aluminum. I can tell you from pushing it over to my garage that it's going to need some brake work and possibly wheel bearings. Let's give it a walk around and see what else we can learn. Starting at the front, you can see that it's only got 2,601 miles on it, which if it's accurate, the engine should be in great shape. Hopefully nothing corrosion otherwise got in there. The mirrors have been removed. I believe the guy used to ride it, the previous owner used to ride it around off-road more. Switch gear is a little bit sun faded. I believe this is an aftermarket quarter turn throttle. I think the stock one comes with two throttle cables. Aftermarket hand guards. I think this tank may have been repainted just because it looks a little cleaner and neater than the rest of it. Let's see. Looks like the turn signals were removed for the off-road riding as well. Got a single disc front brake. Let's see. There's some more of that corrosion. It looks like there was a decompression lever here that is now missing. Might need to look into that and try and figure out what that's supposed to be, where that's supposed to be. Yeah, look at that oxidation on there. See how much of that cleans up. There's a lot of rust on the steel parts as well. Yeah, wow, look at the adjuster. Ick. The tires look good, and they still have some nibs on them. Not 100% sure this is the stock exhaust on it either. But overall, it's a pretty decent looking bike if things clean up. So we're gonna roll it into the garage and start getting into it. I didn't notice this initially, but the fuel line is just kind of tucked up under the seat and disconnected from the carburetor. This cover has got some quick releases, so one is missing down here. Behind it, got our air box, and okay, that's not falling apart, but it feels like it's on the verge. Yeah, that's done. So I definitely need to get a new air filter for it. Yeah. I believe this cover has got the battery in it. Ooh, the Golden Dragon. That sounds exciting. Curious to see if this has got any voltage. Well, it's not completely flat. It's got 0.42 volts. That might not be enough to start though. All right, I've hooked the jump pack up to it. I'm just gonna see if it lights up. No lights. Oh, help if I turned on the jump pack first. Let's try that again. All right, that's better. Got a headlight, got a neutral light, brake light is working. All right, I'm gonna see if this battery will charge up. I kind of doubt it, but it never hurts to try. Before I try and charge that up, I want to see if I've got spark. So spark plug looks a little bit on the black side. I think it was sparking. Yep, I went and looked at the video and I can see spark pretty good in there. I do think we're going to need a new spark plug. So the other thing I just realized is that there is 0 brake pressure on the rear brake. So I don't know if that's going to be a master cylinder issue or a slave cylinder issue, caliper issue. So I'm trying to decide what to do next, but I'd like to order everything all at once. And since I know they're a problem, I think I might just take those things apart. And then I'm probably going to pop the carb off, have a look at that. I know I need a new air filter. I have to figure out how this is supposed to hook up. See if Frank is concerned about it, if he's going to need the decompression lever. I think that's supposed to run down through here somewhere, but I'm not 100% sure. Yeah. It hooks down here. So when you use the kickstart, it pulls that down. It works automatically. Inside the gas tank looks really good. That looks like new in there. So that's good. Don't have to worry too much about that. Getting the side cover off is pretty easy. It's just that one screw that screws in there, and then there's a grommet there and a grommet there that just have to be popped out. Once that's out, you have to reach inside or underneath by the wheel, and there's two 12mm bolts. Once those are undone, the seat can come off. Now to get the gas tank off, it's just these 2 bolts, and since the fuel line's already disconnected, I think it'll just be those 2 bolts and it'll pop off. I suspect that this is actually an aftermarket carb too, because it looks like it might be a flat slide. And I already mentioned that it's got the single cable. This is new to me too. The parts diagram calls this a resonator box, and it's on the air in, so it just must have to do with how the air is getting to the cylinder. I've never seen one of those before either. Not sure the best way to get the carb out of there, if the air box can move back at all, or if you just have to muscle it out, because this doesn't feel very flexible at all. I might see if I can loosen up the air box and if that'll shift back at all to give me a little bit more room to work with. Oh, before I do it, let me try and take off this resonator chamber. All right. There is our carb. Hopefully it looks better on the inside than it does on the out. So I am admittedly unfamiliar with this carb style, but how different can it be, right? Figure out how to unhook the cable. Right, I'll be honest, I can't quite figure out how to take this thing apart, and since it was sliding just fine, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to try and clean up the needle in situ as good as I can, and clean up some of this. It smells like a chicken coop. I can see the cable, how it's kind of hooked in down there, but I'm concerned that if I try and get it off, and if I don't do it right, or even if I do it right, that it might be really difficult to reconnect. And since the cable seems to be moving just fine, and the slide is moving fine, I'm going to call it not worth it. But I will open up the carb and see how those jets are looking. Oh, hey, look at that. The last video I did, I had a carb that had a similar floats that were on posts like this that I'd never seen before, and now there's 2 in a row. So there's some gunk in the bottom that has to be cleaned out, but it looks like this must have been drained. So I'll try and clean that up as much as possible, but that's a good sign. Hopefully the rest of this looks pretty good then. Yeah, some gunk there, yes. But most of this looks pretty clean. It started. There it goes. Okay. Yeah, most of that stuff blew right off. But this jet looks pretty clogged. Now I can see through the idle jet, so that's a good sign. Let's see if that idle jet comes out without too much trouble. If not, I'm going to leave it. But yeah. All right, that's good. Yeah, there was just a little bit of schmutz in it, but it just blew out with air. Let's see if you can see this. I can see through it. It's good. Get this one. This one. That one's clogged. I think it'll clean out pretty easy from what I'm seeing. So this is a little tool I made for cleaning carbs, which is just a piece of piano wire with a loop and some blue tape, so it's got a place to hold it and it's easier to find. But it's really good for poking out through some of these small passages. Looks better already. I'll give these things a dunk in the ultrasonic too. Trying to loosen anything else up in there. Let's see, what else have we got? Emulsion tube, it should just push out. You can see how far it is. It just needs to go a little bit further. I can see there's just a bit of schmutz on it, but let's see what I've got to push that out. I think I've got a, there we go. Yeah, there's our emulsion tube. That looks good. Get our needle. Quick visual inspection. Okay, that looks almost new. That's great. Just gonna leave that. You can see this one has a little clip that keeps them paired. Got a mix screw there. This is an idle screw. This is an enrichment circuit. Let's take the enrichment circuit off. Don't get a lot of room to work there. That all looks good, at least as expected. Okay. Idle baseline is going to be at 8, caught 8. and mixed groove. Mixed groove is going to be one and a half, 2 and a half, almost 3. Okay, like 2 7/8. Spring at the seat. Little tiny washer. Does this one have an O-ring? It does. Always handy to have an assortment of picks in the garage, so you can get little things like that out of there. Yeah, now I'm just going to see if I can get this gasket off in one piece. So working around very carefully with an X-Acto, I was able to get the gasket off. We'll use that again since I don't have another one of those. I don't know what that screw is. I'm going to leave that on. I think these are just holding the body together. Yeah, it looks like there's some slide guides in there that could come out with those. So I don't think it's anything that I need to worry about. And I'm just going to dunk this like this and see what it comes out looking like. This part I'm just going to try and clean up by hand. I took off the bottom of the bowl as well, but I'm just going to try and clean this up by hand. Because I don't know if there's any adverse effect to the ultrasonic on these floats. So just rather safe than sorry. How the hell did I get this thing out of there? Almost. So neither the front nor rear wheel are rolling very easy. I mean, you can see it turns, but it doesn't spin like it should. And so now I have to determine if the wheel bearings are okay or if it's just the brakes that are hanging up. I suspect it's just the brakes, but we're gonna find out by popping the pads out. Little plug. And then pin. Decent life on them. A little bit of rust on the edge. Let's see how it spins now. Considerably better. So I'm going to assume that our wheel bearings are okay. Plus I'm not getting any movement out of them if I try and shake them. So I think we just need to worry about the caliper. So the back is going to be similar, but it's going to be worse. We're missing our cover pin here, but rolls better forward, but backwards pretty bad. And I can see this pin is looking pretty rusty. With the cover off, it might be difficult to get out. Let's find out. Ow! Son of a... Alright, that wasn't bad to get out, so that's good. These pads are a lot more stuck in there. Okay. Might have to work on those a bit. I can see the piston looks like it's rusted. I need to find something to pry that and push it back a little bit. Almost. There we go. Yuck. Now this one should pull out easier. And that rolls a heck of a lot better too. So we're going to assume that that's okay. We'll have to look at the calipers, probably do a rebuild on those. Not 100% sure how this brake caliper comes off. So I'm just going to take off what I can see and go from there. Looks like it's just going to be that, because I think this is just a slider. That looks like it's a 5mm Allen. Nope. Maybe a 6. just slide off. I wonder if I need to disconnect that line first. It's gonna get messy. We're gonna see if we can do this without making too much of a mess. I'm just gonna... There's fluid in the system. Quite get me any closer to getting that off, does it? I guess that means... All right, I figured a way to get this off is I can unbolt the pin from the back side. All right, with the rear brake disconnected, I'm going to take the front off too. So, start. All right, this one doesn't look too bad. Might be able to save those pistons. Rear definitely needs a piston. All right, I'm going to start with the rear here. Just having a look at stuff. I think I'm going to try and de-rust a couple of these parts. I'm going to order just new pads because why bother? This I'm going to just try and clean up as much as I can because that should be greased. Probably just try and reuse the banjo bolt and the washers. I do want to try and de-rust this pin as well because it's got a lot of rust around the nut. That might come with the kit since we need to get the kit with the piston anyway. That clip pops off. All right, I've charged up my compressor. Now I'm going to get a cushion in there. Hopefully that'll blow out. But it does not appear to be moving. And then I'm actually going to try and knock it in a bit before I get the heat. Maybe I don't need it. If I can get it to move in at all, then maybe it'll break free. Okay, that moved. So it's not completely seized. So let's try the air again. All right, that worked. So I'm going to have to see, and this thing doesn't actually, nah, that's gonna need to be replaced no matter what. All right, and I'll order new seals as well, so I'm not gonna worry about being too careful with these. Now we can take off our bleeder valve. Maybe. There it goes. And we can get this all cleaned up. All right, that's one. Well, let's strip apart the front one. And this one's going to be a little trickier just because it's two valves. So everything looks good. I'm trying to remove that if you need to. So this is tricky when you go to blow it out with the air compressor, because a lot of the times one piston wants to move faster than the other. So the thing you've got to do is kind of wedge something in there to keep one from coming all the way out. So this time I'm going to use a couple of shims of wood so that'll keep them from coming all the way out. And we'll see if the air pressure gets them both tight up against the wood. And it did. All right, good. So I think they'll both come out from here now. Well, maybe I need a little bit more air. Don't. There we go. There it is. And similar to the rear, I'm going to pick out our seals. And the front looks good enough that we might not need a rebuild kit for it. We might be able to just salvage what we've got. That doesn't look too good though, but we'll clean it up. All right, these are the two calipers broken down. The pads are there, they're gonna get replaced. This is the rear caliper with its shims. This is the dust seal, this is the oil seal. These two crush washers go on the banjo bolt where the brake line feeds in. This is the piston, it'll get replaced. This is the valve cap, or the bleeder valve. This is the bleeder valve. These are two rubber bushings that go in the sliders. These two things are the sliders, and this is the pin that goes through the hole that holds the brake pads through that hole. The front one, we've got the carrier and the caliper, shims as well. Got the bolts that bolted to the fork legs, two pistons, oil seals, dust seals. This is the pin that holds the pads, similar to this one. Two bushings. Oh, there's a cap that goes over the pin. The cap was missing on the back one. Once again, a bleeder valve cover, banjo bolt, and washers. So I think this is all going to go back together. It all looks pretty clean. This is the first time I've actually seen plastic pistons in a brake caliper. They're kind of nice because they're lighter and they don't corrode. But I don't know why. So I don't know why you don't see that more often. If it's who knows? Anyway, I'm going to put the front one back together. So when reassembling, you want to get some clean, new, fresh brake fluid and use that as your lubricant. So I'm just going to put a little bit inside the pistons. And I'm going to take my oil seals and get a bit on those too. And they'll just seep down in there. And then the dust seals. Oil seals are wider and they go in the bottom groove. Dust seals are narrower and go in the top groove. Now, I've done other brakes that have a slightly different arrangement. Sometimes the dust seal clips into the piston. I like these just because they're a straight piston. And now with that lubricated, it'll pop right in. Now I'm going to come around to here. I'm going to get my bleeder nipple. It can just be finger tight for now, since we're going to have to bleed it anyway. Gotta remember how my shims hook on now. I think this one actually hooks on here like that. And this one I think tucks down like that. Let me just see how that makes sense. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Just gonna start the banjo in here to keep it all together. Whoops. So now I have to remember how these go together. Remember this one clips in like that because that's going to go for this slider, and we want this slider going there, so that goes there. In theory it goes there. Come on. Right. Sometimes those boots can be a bit of a pain in the butt. So a good grease to use on these, you got to grease those sliders, is a red rubber grease. You just don't want to overdo it. You want to make sure get a nice little decent coating on there. You can take those. Okay. Now just for fun, I'll show you how the pads go in too. So the one pad clips in at the back there. The other pad clips in at the back. Make sure that without the rotor to space them, they kind of want to fall out. And then, that spring far enough. Assuming. Maybe I don't have that spacer in the right spot. Yeah, I think it goes on that way actually. Try that again. Now, yeah, the pin will go through there. You just screw it in to lock it in, and then that cap goes on the top to cover it. While I'm waiting for those brake parts to come in, I'm going to try and clean up a little bit of this aluminum oxidation. I've read that a 50-50 mix of white vinegar and water should help immensely. I'm a little bit skeptical, but I've got my brush and I'm going to give it a try. So it looks like that helped. Still not perfect by any means, and you can still see some white junk in there, so maybe I have to try another application, but it looks a lot better than it did. Maybe it still has to dry out a little bit more too, but yeah, after spraying it down with or brushing it with the vinegar and water, I sprayed it down with soapy water, and then I gave it a good rinse. And I know I still have to coat it with like some WD-40 or something else to protect the metal, but yeah, looks a lot better than it did. All right. Next thing I'm going to do before, since I'm still waiting for brake parts, is I'm going to take off my valve covers and guides and check my valve clearances. Just see where they're at, make sure they're in the right range. That one's tight. I do not like that. That one's tight too. Okay, my exhaust ones are loose. The intake ones that are problematic. I'll put a little bit of blaster on those. Look through the toolkit for another motorcycle I've got. I found a 24mm wrench, so maybe this will work better. At least it's grabbing it on more sides. That worked. It's good because I feel like I can hit this a little harder. All right, all for our loosening. Find top dead center on the compression stroke. So that's the exhaust opening, exhaust closing, intake opening, intake closing. All right, I've confirmed it's at top dead center. You can hear valves wiggle. That means they've got a little bit of clearance. So that's a good sign. I'll get my peeler gauges and check and see what that's at. All right, it tells me this should be 0.03 millimeters to, 0.03 millimeters to 0.07 millimeters. And at 0.06, this one fits in there really easy. So that side feels pretty good because I can just get 0.06 in there. Our exhaust clearances are a little bit bigger. They are between 0.06 millimeters and 0.10. I'm going to guess 0.06 is going to fit in there. Yeah, that fits in there very easy on both sides. 10 fits in really easy as well on both sides, so those need to tighten up a bit. Okay, those are both set. Both the exhausts are at 0.08 millimeters. I can put my caps back on. The new brake pads arrived, so we're going to get those on and get the caliper back on the bike. Oops. Of course, that's not going to go on if I've got this in there. Don't want to let it hang on the hose, so while I grab my bolts, I'm just going to stick that screwdriver in there. And because brakes are important, I'm going to put a little bit of blue thread locker on them. That's interesting. So, when I was taking this apart, I noticed that this bolt wasn't seated all the way. It was about 1/16 of an inch out. And just now when I was putting it in, I noticed that the end looked like somebody had shortened a bolt. So, it looks like they didn't shorten it quite enough, and when I seated it all the way, it makes contacts with the rotor bolt. So I'm going to have to grind down the end of that and shorten it up a bit. All right, I've taken a bit of distance off the end of that, like 1/8 of an inch, and so now it's got about 1/16 of an inch clearance to the brake disc. That should work. Still waiting for a couple of parts to come in so I can rebuild the rear brake, and I've got a decompression cable coming. But I'm going to see if a new battery and a new air filter, see if she will start. Just confirming that's charged. It is. Just confirming with the new battery in. Lights up. Headlights on. Tail lights on. Brake light works. All right, so I've got my filter cage. I'm going to just try and clean that up a bit. And I've got my new air filter. So I have to figure out how to slip the air filter into that. I think I'm going to oil this before I slip it onto there. It's going to be messy. All right, well, that's kind of messy, but there's an oiled filter. And I don't know if this is really necessary, but I saw a video where somebody recommended smearing a bit of grease around this sealing surface. So I may do that as I put it back together. That's the air filter again. At some point in the near future, we'll get an inline fuel filter. But for right now, I don't have one that's for a line this big. So, since this tank is so clean inside, I don't think it'll matter for initial test firing and running. Well, I've given it a bit of fuel. Let's see if she wants to fire. Positive. I suspect we have an air leak. Reserve. I hooked up the fuel line, right? All right. All right, so that was causing me some problems, but I fixed it, and it's idling great now. The dumb thing was, it was just the cable. Since I'd been messing around with there, the top of the cable wasn't seated properly. So now, with it seated properly, idles nicely. And I've got my brake rebuild kit. So that gets screwed onto the bracket. That'll get greased with that. This pin will get greased with that. And then this one is gonna go, I think, this way. I'll see once I get onto the bike. But for right now, let's figure out where these go. And I think this goes on the bracket. So I think I've got to move over to the bike before I put the rest of this together. So I did this a little bit odd when I took it apart, because you're really supposed to take this carrier off before you take the caliper off. But what it means is when I put it together, I have to kind of get this into position before I bolt this slider in. So I'm going to slide this position, grease that, put it in, and then I have to kind of get this into position and use a wrench in an awkward way to tighten that. But before I do that, I'm going to get this, I'm going to get some grease and get this rubber gasket seated in there. There's a groove for it, and that one goes there. So, get my little bit of grease here. You always want to use this grease sparingly, because you don't want it to create a problem where the slide doesn't have enough room to move. Get some on the slide as well. Get this to sit in where it needs to be. And get this slide screwed in. Oh, I wonder if I'm getting ahead of myself. Maybe let me do this other one first before I put this one in, just in case. So we are going to grease this one and slide that into its home, and then I'm second guessing my decision to save the step of removing the carrier, but I didn't want to take the rear wheel off. Got the wrong wrench. I've got that on there pretty darn snug now. Let's seat the boot. All right. Cool. Oh, gotta get this shim. It's gonna go in there. Make sure that make sure that's not going anywhere. Hopefully that's good. Okay, that's good. Now that shim is in place. There we go. Okay. It'd be nice to have that cap there that was missing, but can source that later if need be. So I don't want to make sure I don't forget this little cage that goes on here too, but I'm gonna wait and put that on until after I've bled the brakes. So. It's on there very tight. Still some fluid in there. Let's suck that out of there before we try and put anything new in it. Get some fresh fluid in there and see if it pumps at all. I still haven't actually determined conclusively that the master cylinder is good. Let's see. Can't quite tell if that level is going down. So I'm going to open the bleeder nipple and try and suck it through the system. That definitely is going down now. Still a lot of air in the system. Okay, now we're building pressure. Good. That feels good in the garage, but we'll have to see what it feels like on the road. See if it needs any further bleeding. For some reason, it seems like every time I do brakes, I need to do a secondary bleed after the first test ride, and then it brings them in. I gave it all a quick spray with some water just in case there was any brake fluid that dripped. Now, we'll get this guy on there. All right. So the next order of business is going to be to put this new decompression cable on there. All right, I took it off. I got it to the outside of this bracket. I realized the nut has to go to the bottom side of this and not the top. And now I've got it hooked back in up here. I'm gonna open that clamp up so I can get it. But you can see when you start to push the kickstand, it opens the decompression lever. And I believe I've got it set so that it's all the way relaxed when it's on. Yeah, there's no tension in the cable per se. All right, this clip looks like it was probably pinched down at some point. Maybe I should have tried to feed the cable in it first, but there we go. Beautiful. So the next thing I have to try and do is get this chain slider on there. The old one was just falling apart. So this is going to get in there. So I'm going to take this off and see if I can get it slid around the chain and swing arm. Shoot. Maybe if I take this lower slider off, I can get enough clearance. All right, I was able to wiggle the lower slider block out of there. So let's try this again and see if now it's got enough, clearance. All right, that's promising. Good. Make sure I can get this back in. Wouldn't that be? Not quite sure what I'm getting hung up on. That was not easy, but I was able to get the lower block back in. So now I can just bolt that. And now, get this back into position. This is held on with these little cups and screws that go into the swing arm here. Don't want to get either of them too tight until get them both into position. New chain sliders installed. I think I just have the cover on the other. Well, I've got to get this on first. Then it's the cover on the other side and seat, and then I think I can go for a test ride. As always, thanks for watching.